Hi everyone, welcome back to the Zicast. I'm your host Ryan Ziaks, and today I'm joined by political science student Sophia Wotman.
Hi.
Awesome, and great to have you here today, Sophia. So on my show, I interview people, I get to know them better, and I'm hyped to learn more about you. So how about you kick things off by telling us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I would love to. So I'm a current senior at Brown studying political science. I'm from Great Neck, New York, so I'm on Long Island, or as I like to say, just outside the city. Um, and yeah, I'm a big writer, and that often kind of informs my interest in politics.
Mm,
So kind of the intersections of political writing, and policy. I'm also very creative. I'm a jazz musician here at Brown as well. I play trumpet. Yeah, and I love writing in all kinds of forms, creative writing, journalism. I'm
mm,
an editor for our school paper.
mm.
So yeah, I feel like the big things, politics, writing, music, and the intersections of all of that.
Amazing. And you mentioned that you go to Brown University, you're in your senior year,
Yes.
correct? Awesome, awesome. And I'm excited to get into all of those things, the journalism to the creative aspects. So to kind of kick off our topics, where does your interest in political science stem from?
Yeah, well, it's actually a funny story because I did not come into college knowing that I wanted to major in political science. I think I took like AP Gov and thought it was okay, nothing
Hmm.
special. But I applied to Brown as a creative writing major
Hmm.
and came my freshman fall, did not get into any creative writing classes. But I happened to just sign up for an international politics class kind of on a whim. It was like the most seats available. And as a
Hmm.
freshman at Brown, you kind of don't have the first pick of seats. I was like, oh, a spot. Yay, I'll check this out. And I ended up loving it. And realized that I really wanted to write in that capacity. I also was really interested in like female writers. I was a
Hmm.
big like, Emily Dickinson fan.
Hmm.
And then kind of from that passion, got really interested in like women's rights policy.
Hmm.
And that's actually what I'm working on now as a senior
Hmm.
thesis on abortion rights,
Hmm.
the United States, which I can get a little bit more into later. But I kind of found the political science passion a little bit on accident and kind of toyed with it for a while. Thought I was more interested in the history aspect and took a history class where the professor was like, yeah, I'm not going to get into the political analysis. Like, that's not super interesting or relevant. And I was like, well, I actually want to. And I realized I missed it. And by it was like middle of my sophomore year, I took a class on it's like international politics and human rights. And I loved it. And I'm like, wow, okay, like this feels really good. So yeah, a little bit by accident, but found it to be a great kind of means of combining my interests and writing about issues that I'm passionate about.
Awesome. And how was it like blending an interest in creative writing to kind of more political writing, so more of an educational form? How is it like adapting those styles?
It's interesting because you'd think they wouldn't really overlap. It's like a
Hmm.
more analytical style of writing, and then like you think of something like poetry or like a fiction piece.
Hmm.
It's actually kind of through taking, we have a creative nonfiction department here at Brown, and
Hmm.
taking some of those classes that kind of helped bridge the gap a little bit. Where like you can kind of write about anything, whether like a personal narrative or like a more journalism style piece. And it was like kind of through that medium that I started writing more creatively about these like important issues to me. And then also when I started on the Herald my
Hmm.
sophomore year and started doing that. And I cover activism and issues of like affinity and identity. So that's anything like uh, impact on like DEI policy and then covering protests and like starting to do that and
Hmm.
realizing like, wow, I feel like I'm still, using my creative muscles here. Even if I'm not like making something up in like a fiction story or a poem, that I found there to be a really nice overlap.
And what have you been able to do to kind of expand that interest?
Yeah,
Hmm.
no, last summer I was a press intern for Senator Sheldon Whitehouse,
Hmm.
who's one of the Rhode Island senators. That was also like I mean, very related, but also a little bit different. So in that, I worked like directly with the press team,
Hmm.
and just kind of saw like a window into Congress. Yeah, so the senator, he's really his big thing, if you don't know, is like environmental issues, and I'm like, that's not an area of my expertise. But as part of my role, I got to watch his speeches like create clips of his videos, write quotes for press releases, just see like how a press team works and puts forward a senator's message. And even if it wasn't like the specific policy area that I'm like particularly an expert in, like it
Hmm.
was just so interesting to learn about. Um, you also get to go like to the like main Capitol building and you
Mm,
get to sit in on hearings, you get to sit in on floor votes. It's the funniest thing, like sitting at the top of the
mm,
gallery and watching as they call a roll vote and all the senators just kind of like roll in and roll out.
mm,
You get to like have funny interactions with them on the Senate subway, which is like goes between the office buildings and see it in action and realize that they are just people. And also, a lot of their like teams like you don't get to see on TV
mm,
when you see like, these talking heads. Then when you're actually there, you see, wow, the country is really run by like 20 and 30-year-olds
mm,
that like write these speeches. And I mean, thankfully,
mm,
like Senator Whitehouse, like he was one that like he likes to write his own things, but a lot of politicians don't necessarily. So
mm,
it's really inspiring to see like these big teams of really passionate young individuals working in politics.
mm,
Um, I also found it to be way more down to earth than I ever imagined. We have a
mm,
Senate softball league where each of the offices versus each other in softball in like the like 90-degree humid DC heat, like on
mm,
the near the National Mall, and it's so much fun. So it was kind of unlike anything I've ever imagined, and just so cool, just like seeing policy in action. For better or for worse, also I was there during the Big Beautiful Bill
mm,
passing over the summer.
mm,
So we actually went to the house and saw that pass, and that was also like a seeing half the balcony cheer, half
mm,
not looking very happy, and seeing a mix of like staffers, also just the general public who are allowed to go up and watch, which I also didn't know.
mm.
So yeah, that was kind of a window into my summer.
Interesting. And do you have a favorite, any specific favorite memory from doing that? Like you mentioned some fun stories with senators you would see or anything like that. Like any fun memories?
Yeah, the one that sticks out. So we did a dome tour,
Hmm.
so it's if you like see the Capitol building, it's like the dome, and
Hmm.
like at the very top, that's like wait, actually, I have a little model of the Capitol. Can I bring it?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. It's actually sitting here. I got this. Yeah. So it's
Hmm.
so it's like Capitol, and it's like this base part is like where like tours go, and it's like the rotunda, where
Hmm.
you've seen like inaugurations, like funeral stuff happen there. The dome is all the way up here.
Hmm.
And now only members of Congress and their chiefs of staff can go up there. But if you like go up with them, like they can take you. So we got to go, and it was like basically this really treacherous like staircase that like swirls up, and you get to look down and see like all these people
Hmm.
like taking their tours and looking at all the famous historical artifacts. And we went to the top, and at the top of the rotunda, there's this like big famous painting, and we got to be like right under it, which is really cool. It was very hot up there, so I don't have the AC. Yeah, and then we went up like right up here too, and it's like this balcony you could just look out on DC. And it was like on like a anything I've seen before, and I like FaceTime my parents, and
Hmm.
I was there with like our staff assistant and some of the other interns, and it was like a really nice bonding moment.
Hmm.
We went up with Jack Reed, who's the other Rhode Island senator's chief of staff, so that
Hmm.
it was just a really like special, unique experience.
Now I'm curious from that experience, what was the biggest thing that you were able to see that the general public doesn't see?
From the dome tour, or you say like from the
Just
just
from the
work
overall experience of
of
getting to
working in
work with a
Congress?
senator, getting to work at the Capitol.
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I'd say like two things. I think like one thing I really learned was like about working in politics. It's like you can't necessarily tune out politics if you're working in it.
Hmm.
And it is like often very emotionally charged.
Hmm.
And obviously, as we know, the political environment is very partisan and very divided and very tense right now. And to some degree, you see that. Like some
Hmm.
degree, you watch a hearing and you hear Ted Cruz and Senator Whitehouse duking it out, and
Hmm.
like you're there, and it's like, wow, like people are fighting. On the other hand, you see like these staffers, like Democrats or Republicans, all like having lunch in the cafeteria,
Hmm.
and we're all kind of there together. So like to some degree, you see this partisanship, and some degree you don't. So
Hmm.
it's like an interesting kind of mix. And also working in a place where like you're just kind of surrounded by this. And I've had to kind of reckon with that myself of like, during the school year, I can kind of not check the news and kind of
Hmm.
like not be as like into it, but like when you're on a press team, you're reading the headlines every day, you're living and breathing politics, and like kind of thinking about like, wow, like this is definitely a certain kind of lifestyle to live, to work in politics on the Hill specifically.
So I was always curious how the outside noise piles into something like that. Do you ever feel that when a lot of the way people are reacting to something? Do you feel that entering that space, if that makes sense?
You mean like kind of like the general like citizens and then kind of how that impacts political?
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's not one without the other. It's also very
Mm,
interesting seeing the public interact with
mm,
people in Congress. Like, I mean, the office buildings are completely open. So if you walk in, you go through your little like metal detector, anyone can walk into a Senate building or
mm,
a House building. And I think that is specifically designed to encourage like
mm,
people to interact with their members of Congress. And like
mm,
we could see like the senator's schedule, he'd have meetings with lobbyists and people who are passionate about environmental issues. I even know people at Brown who went
mm,
from like a climate activism group who went to talk to him. And that's like, it's really interesting. And again, there's a lot of nuances, a lot of people who may not have access to that,
mm,
and, a lot of administrative burdens involved in
mm,
that process. But I was at least a little bit surprised
mm,
to see at least a couple really good moments where the public, I mean, sometimes there'd be protests in the
mm.
Senate cafeteria. We'd be eating lunch and we'd see it. It's like really interesting to see, and something that I didn't really think much about as just like a citizen not working there.
What else surprised you from that whole experience?
I spoke to this a little bit earlier, but just how down to earth people were. And I think, I mean, I had a really sweet office. I mean, Rhode
Mm,
Islanders tend to be very down to earth and friendly. Um, but I think the Hill gets a reputation of being very like straight-laced, like suit and tie, like kind of thing. And I mean, people were just so lovely. And I mean, there's, a big coffee chat culture, but I mean, everyone that I chatted with was just so sweet and just so like willing to help and to talk about what they do and very, very passionate about what they do.
mm,
I think people kind of pick and choose like kind of the policy areas and the issues. We had like people on like his public health team and people on foreign affairs and people who are really experts in their area, but also people just willing to learn and talk about issues with other people. Uh, we also had taste of like blank state. So we had like taste of Utah or like taste of Hawaii. They had like these big events where they showcased like states and their food and had tons of like food vendors from like all across I mean, from that like that
mm,
specific state to sit. I remember Taste of Utah. Like I have never once been in Utah or
mm,
known that like they had like special like cured meats and cheeses and like it was just amazing. And like I mean, Utah is a dominantly Republican state, and
mm.
like it was just seeing like everybody coming together, Democrats and Republicans, just to enjoy food and spend time together. So that was really cool.
That's also something I wanted to kind of bring us back to is that I always kind of think of a lot of times the two political parties, they're like rival sports teams. And you kind of mentioned them kind of you seeing like Republicans, Democrats getting food together. I'm curious if what more of that dynamic you saw throughout your time there.
It's interesting to think about. I mean, especially as someone who goes to a school that is pretty much all liberal,
Mm,
and not really interacting with many people of the opposing party, of
mm,
my like who are also my age. I mean, we'd kind of walk around like groups of like our like Democratic interns like from our office,
mm,
and we had this thing during our like week of orientation. It was like a scavenger hunt around the Capitol building, and we
mm,
just had to run around, and we actually saw another group of interns doing a scavenger hunt. And we
mm,
ran into them, and it's like always, it's like when you go to college and you always the questions are like, "What's your major? Where are you from? What are you
mm,
studying?" In Congress, it's like, "What's your office? Like, where are you from?" Like, So it was kind of that, and I think we kind of were trying to clock like what are our parties, and but it was kind of a nice moment of like we're kind of doing the same thing, and obviously we're working for with very different offices. I remember even coming back from lunch. And Senator Rick Scott from Florida walked into the elevator,
mm,
and like he just started talking to us. He's like, "Oh, where are you like from? Like, who are you working for?" Like, "Oh, Rhode Island." And he's like, "Oh, I was like stationed back in Rhode Island," and
mm,
it was like a funny story. I was like, I did not like anticipate having this conversation with this Republican senator from Florida once.
mm,
So little moments like that, and again, that does not negate a lot of the tensions and a lot of the
mm.
problems that we see in terms of partisanship and like the conflicts there. But at least it was a little kind of bright spot in the summer, and in kind of realizing that we are all in fact human.
Any starstruck moments where you met a figure you're like, oh wow, this person's real?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I remember during the like the big beautiful bill, the budget bill, like stuff that was happening. And Hakeem Jeffries spoke. He broke the record for longest floor speech in the House.
Mm,
And me and my friend went and sat and we watched him. That was really interesting because he was talking for hours on end. And obviously, it's hard to talk for hours on end about
mm,
the Republican budget bill.
mm.
He can talk for quite a while, but so we got there and I forgot how many hours he was at, but it was a lot of hours at that point. They'd all been like up all night and because these big votes. And he started talking about like he went to University of Binghamton. He started talking about school and he started talking about like I think his parent was from Connecticut.
Mm.
And the were like Connecticut representatives were like cheering for him in the back, and it was just a really like sweet moment, and I really do admire him, and also like for sticking through, and obviously at that point we knew that the bill was going to pass,
Mm.
but and also just seeing all the other like Democratic like representatives like backing him up and cheering for him, and just being there in person and seeing that moment was really inspiring for me. And then in a moment where it was like yeah, we're gonna lose this vote. This bill is gonna hurt so many people, but like the Democrats are still standing with what they believe. And yeah, that was just really heartwarming to see.
Mm.
And
And
also very starstruck because I was like, wow, I'm here.
and you kind of mentioned kind of seeing the two parties coming together, kind of being a little perspective changing. Were there any other kind of moments like that throughout your experience in Congress?
Of them like coming together.
Or even just like anything in general that kind of changed the way you view how that whole process happens?
Ooh. Hmm. I guess also like seeing well, my desk in the office was at a very interesting position. I was right by like at the end of this hallway was like my desk, the senator's office, and his door that he uses.
Mm.
So it was kind of like the best desk and also the worst desk. But I also got to overhear a lot of things.
Mm.
And sometimes he'd always walk by and be like, "Hey, Soph." And I'd be
Mm.
like, "Hey." And I'd hope I wasn't like eating a granola bar or like doing something.
Like when the waiter comes by, ask how the food is while your mouth is stuffed.
Yes, literally, exactly. I'd be like, "Hi, Sophie." Yeah, but I also got to listen in, whether I was supposed to or not, just by virtue of sitting there, to a lot of conversations of the other, like the senior staff. So I was right next to like one of the communications director's office, one of our like senior attorneys, because the senator is on the Judiciary Committee, and can hear their reactions, like a Supreme Court decision dropped, and like they'll be like, oh my gosh, and then like get in the hallway and the senator will come and they'll all talk about it. Or even like his performance in a hearing. I remember there was the one like with Ted Cruz and they're like, oh my gosh, like Ted Cruz, he's getting like so many Diet Coke or like Dr. Pepper, it was Dr. Pepper, like getting delivered to him. Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. And just seeing like how these senior staff members are able to problem solve and to react to all that is going on, whether it was a win, whether it was a frustration, and everything in between. Just really interesting to be able to sit there and absorb it and learn from it.
Any other interesting quirks any of the senators had?
Yeah, actually, I'd say like I sat next to Ted Cruz on a Senate subway. Well, so he sat next to me.
Mm.
I think I forget where we were going, but like I think yeah, it was like me and a friend, and then the seat next to me was open. He just like sat down. He was like reading something, and I was just like, ooh, interesting. Yeah, interesting seeing. I mean, I like walk by Mitch McConnell. It's very
Mm.
interesting to see in person. He's very shiny. Um, I think who else? Chuck Schumer. He's very
Mm.
tiny. He's very sweet. Though, Kristen Gillibrand, Senator Gillibrand from New York, has a really cute dog that
Mm.
she'd bring around
Mm.
occasionally. I was not here for this interaction, but some of my friends, they were like, I think they got lost or something somewhere in the Capitol. And my friend Grace, she was like, "Oh, we should like get a map or something." And Cory Booker just walked by and was like, "That's a brilliant idea," and walked away. And I think it made all of their days. So, stuff like that,
Mm.
where sometimes like they'll just start chatting with you. And then sometimes like they will be in their own world. And it's just so interesting to see these people that you see on TV.
Mm.
And yeah, that they're just people too.
Yeah, I think it's easy to forget that it's a workplace, and I'm curious how, through all of these experiences, how you'll bring that into your work moving forwards.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, as I'm thinking about like what I want to incorporate in my future career, I think something I've had to grapple with a lot is like thinking about work-life balance.
Mm,
And this definitely gets into my work in journalism a lot, and why I've kind of leaned away from going into journalism potentially.
mm,
Um, yeah, because as I mentioned, like you can't turn the TV off.
mm,
You can't turn the news off when you work in politics. And I am definitely, as I'm very passionate about certain political issues, I feel very emotional sometimes. And it's
mm,
hard sometimes when you're working in this type of environment and the work is very important. I feel the work is very important. And then sometimes it's a lot emotionally and it's heavy. And having to think about that
mm.
in a future career. And like this experience definitely exposed me that and something I'm really thinking about. And also like, in journalism, it's like the story breaks, like you have to be there. If you're at dinner, like you you
Mm.
have to be there. And like similarly, if there's a vote and you had plans to go away for the weekend, like, sometimes you got to be there. And obviously there's different capacities to that in all of these fields. But definitely something to consider and something I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I've had conversations with other journalists who echoed those same sentiments. I always joke that it's like Batman when there's the bat signal, you have to go to the bat
Exactly.
signal. And I'm curious how, because you kind of mentioned the kind of more emotionally charged aspects of this, how do you kind of channel that or kind of work through those kinds of that kind of barrier?
I think reminding myself the importance of the work. I
Mm,
mean, when it's applied to when I'm covering a story for the Herald, if it's like a really there was some protests last year against the Trump administration.
mm,
I remember when they were threatening to take away federal funding, trying to get Brown to sign on to like a compact for educational excellence, and there were a lot of protests against that, and it's very emotionally charged, and the stakes are high. And I stand there and listen, and like as a journalist, you're a neutral party, like by virtue of the job that is what you're doing. And just reminding myself like of the importance of capturing this moment in history because it is historic. And just how frustrating it is when Trump is attacking DEI at the university, and students are rallying, and we had issues with housing and program housing, and there being changes to rules about that, and um, also funny enough of like I really do want to incorporate writing into whatever future career I decide, but I actually ended up working in Congress this summer over doing a journalism job because I wanted to I mean, be behind the work that is driving the change, whether that's through policy, research, you name it. And there's something very much to be said about like covering these issues and telling these stories, but also like being behind the work. And part of me also feels like I could never be neutral on these types of issues. Like I have such a strong opinion and
I feel like this is a fitting time to get into your editorial work for Brown's newspaper, the Herald. How about you tell us about that?
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, as I mentioned, always been into writing and always kind of wondered if journalism would be something that I would be good at or interested in. So yeah, I was on the board for the Brown University band my freshman year to sophomore fall.
Mm,
And that was a lot. And by the end of my term there, I was thinking, I kind of want to do something different now with my Brown career. I think there's often a lot of pressure, like pick something freshman year and stick with it throughout, which,
mm,
obviously is great, but also great to try other things. So I felt this calling, like, you know what, I'm just going to join towards the end of my sophomore fall. I wrote a story. I think it was like kind of more like through a public health lens on like overdose prevention centers, something I
mm.
knew nothing about. And it was very challenging. And from there, I became a senior staff writer and was just randomly assigned to activism. And it actually kind of wonderfully fit in with my interests in like civil rights, women's rights, human rights. Um, yeah, so I started as a senior staff writer, covering protests, covering like there's a affirmative action panel my first semester, and it starts a little slow. And then this was also around the time a lot of like Israel Gaza activism. So the bulk of my coverage, my junior fall was they were pushing for Brown to divest from Israel. So I covered a lot of those protests, a lot of those meetings, got a lot of student perspective. That was really interesting. And then kind of from there, it felt like that was like the big activism push on campus. And then that ended. and I became an editor after that. And that was kind of like an interesting reset. And then the Trump administration, the second Trump administration started. And we were just seeing just this flood of changes, capturing student opinion, covering these protests about immigration, environmental justice. Visas was a really big issue in the spring when the Trump administration revoked visas, and I covered that breaking. And then in the fall, it was actually a really wonderful time to get into more long form stories. So we did a piece on how activism on campus differed during the first Trump administration in 2017 and then to now. And that was really, we spoke to alums who were involved in like democratic cause protests and anti-Trump protests and looked at and analyzed how that changed. We did like how are students feeling about the Democratic Party now and just kind of like talking to the random students on the main green. Uh, and a little bit unrelated, but I did this project I've been wanting to do for a while about Water Fire, which is Providence's like downtown art festival where they light bonfires on the river, and got to lead a team doing that. So all of that to say, I've been covering a lot of really interesting, relevant issues, has not always been easy. Definitely a big time commitment at
Mm.
times, and the bat signal definitely goes off a lot of the times. But was definitely a really fantastic experience.
You mentioned a lot of stories that were really formative for you as an editor. Any in particular that you would point to as your, I don't know if favorite's the word, but one that's the biggest in your eyes?
Ooh, I feel like there are so many. I mean, one of my favorites was last semester covering, it was a big protest in front of our like Van Wickle gates, which is like the gates that you see when you think of Brown.
Mm,
And it was students and faculty and community members coming together. It was about 100 or so people speaking about the importance of preserving like university independence from the Trump administration regarding the Compact for Educational Excellence. And I've covered a lot of protests, but this was a really interesting one. They also delivered a letter directly to the president of the university, so I got to follow them in there and see that, and just a lot of professors spoke, and professors speak at there's been some like environmental science professors speak at environmental justice protests, but like a lot of the times it's very student led. This one was just really both coming
mm,
together, and professors speaking about like the importance of I mean, I guess maintaining their own curriculums in their classrooms and not to feel constrained on any thought or ideas. And that was just really interesting, and just a really interesting pivotal moment too, in how the Trump administration is interacting with higher education, as we've seen in the last year, specifically with DEI, visas, and just a lot of control coming from the government, and it feeling scary and it feeling like a lot. And it was just really interesting hearing the professors' thoughts on that, the students, community members, seeing them come together. So that was really formative. And then especially the water fire story. I
mm,
did. It was just the first time I've done something like that, and we designed an interactive website. I spoke to vendors and organizers, and we really delved into the finances of this like big nonprofit. Um, and it's just a really core thing in Providence, and
mm.
they're losing funding, and we were looking into why, and it was just something that I came up with randomly in my junior year like investigative journalism seminar, and to actually like do the story and have a team of writers and editors and photographers. We had some writers like go on a boat where they
Mm.
like light the fires. And it was just, I mean, we spoke to the founder of it. It was just such an amazing, like, you take on a really big project and you think like, oh my gosh, is this actually going to happen? And to see it actually happening, and for it to come out and to scroll on the little interactive website, the boat's kind of moving through the water, and it pops up with like a little vendor description, and a lot of vendors where it's like this is like their big night, and like where they sell like they make homemade shoes and like homemade honey, and like just truly amazing experience. Just really like delve into like reporting on this amazing core part of Providence.
Mm. So you really using the paper to, of course, report on these big political things, but also something kind of wholesome like that. So kind of using journalism kind of in an all-around way.
I had a couple experiences where I got to interview some big name people for the
Mm,
Herald, who were like happened to visit Brown, and we reached out and got interviews. So I interviewed Andrew Yang last year,
mm,
which was a very unique experience, and comes with a little funny story, where we actually we were supposed to meet him at like a study room in the library, and he was a little bit late. And I was coordinating with the person who was like helping organize the event, and he was like, "Oh, okay, so he's actually getting boba." And we had to sprint down in the cold to the boba. It was like kung fu tea, and there was Andrew Yang in the middle of kung fu tea because he just wanted some boba.
Mm,
And I sat with him and I asked him a couple questions. He's also a Brown alum, so we
mm,
got to chat about that, and it was just so silly. And then we had boba together. So
mm,
my fun fact is that I've had boba with Andrew Yang. That's a funny experience. And then in the fall, I interviewed Senator Rand Paul,
mm,
who senator from Kentucky, who is has very strong opinions on certain things and has often opposed the Trump administration, even though he is Republican. And that was a very different kind of experience, but also like similarly very interesting to speak to a politician and like just be the person. Like it's one thing to listen to them speak like in an event, but like actually be the
mm.
one asking questions and having a conversation. It was just a really great experience.
You also have all of these creative pursuits. So I want to ask you about your involvement on the, or your experience in the Brown Jazz Band and what that's kind of taught you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I started playing trumpet in third grade.
Mm,
So that was many years ago. Do the math, more than 10 for sure.
mm,
Yeah, and I started just like kind of playing in band, and my trumpet teacher around middle school introduced me to jazz.
mm,
And I loved it. I remember, I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but like chords is a really big thing in jazz, especially when improvising. I did not know what a chord was until my freshman year of high school, and I'd like played in jazz bands like throughout middle school, but my trumpet teacher had a fun way of like just kind of writing out the notes, and it's like just a really formative experience of just not really trying to stick to the page and really try to be creative with it, which is often hard when you kind of are dealing with music theory and then also the musicality and how that all fits together.
mm.
And yeah, so played throughout high school, which was really fun. Did like all county, all state. And then when I came to Brown, I knew I really wanted to join the jazz band. And we had a wonderful new conductor, Timo. He's from Germany, and he often has more experience with a more modern form of jazz, if you know what I mean. So not the traditional bebop that you'd hear, but like we had like guest artists every semester. So we had someone come from Argentina. We had a jazz like vibraphonist come. We had a like mother-daughter duo from Brazil, and we played their music, just to name a few. And just such a great experience in pushing myself musically out of my comfort zone. And funny enough, actually, I wrote my college essay about jazz and about jazz improvisation and how in freshman year of high school, I was in all county jazz rehearsal. And I think there was like a spot I was supposed to solo, and the conductor's like, oh, just like follow the chords. And I was like, oh, shoot, I've never improvised over chord changes before because my trumpet teacher was always like, oh, just like play like these kinds of notes and play around them. And that was definitely a bit of a challenge because I then went on to like Google and was like, okay, like how do I learn all these chords and learn music theory? I didn't really have any music theory experience, and it was like challenging and thinking like, is this the only way to improvise? Um, and I had to work through that. And because even like if you know all the chords, you know all the right notes, quote unquote, that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll play a good solo. That just means you know the notes that sound good. And so it takes that combining with like listening to jazz music and um not even as much like thinking is like this is the right note, but just like feeling the music and what feels good to you. And I know that sounds incredibly cheesy, but I I did a master class with Wynton Marsalis my senior year of high school, and even he said that because I was like soloing, and he's like, turn the music over, don't look at it, like just play how you're feeling. And I feel like I say that because the Brown Jazz Band has been a great space for me to really embrace that. And I took music theory my sophomore year of college, and I kind of partly thought like, wow, like this is gonna make me such a better musician, better soloist, but really it just helped me name the things that I was already doing. And like, oh, I was hitting that note. Like, oh, that's a whatever, 251 and whatever seven major nine chord, you name it. But really, I was just doing that already because I was feeling the music and listening to good soloists and music that I liked. And also, the Brown Jazz Band is filled with wonderful people. I know you know one particularly well, and as do I. But just really collaborative. And everyone just, I mean, we also like, we went bowling at the end of last semester and our conductor came and we bowled with him. And it's just such a lovely group. So not only wonderful music to play, but wonderful people to share that music with.
And has the improvisational aspect of jazz, has that helped you in any other aspects of your life, or does that transfer over?
Oh, absolutely. Um, I feel like I'm a type of person that's very hard on myself on certain things. And in the more rigid disciplines of like academic research or even journalism sometimes,
Mm,
like it can be easy to think like, okay, something has to be this one way. And yes, like politics is not as creative as poetry.
mm,
But there's still ways that you can think about how you frame things, how you emphasize things, how you angle something in a story, what you think that readers want to read, and that like creative mindset is something that I found so helpful in all of those disciplines, and being able to not be as hard. I mean, obviously I am sometimes still, but like not being
mm.
as hard on myself of like this has to be one rigid way, and knowing that there's ways to think outside the box, even in disciplines you think aren't as creative.
And naturally, art and politics, they've always kind of intertwined. I'm curious if you think things like art and music have a way of kind of galvanizing people that just straight like journalism or kind of political writing that those kind of disciplines just can't.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
Mm,
you even think back like historically, a lot of like protest music, especially we think back to like the Vietnam War and how music really just showcased people's points of view, and in a way that sometimes like, not everyone's gonna go out on the street and protest or go call their representative. But if someone's listening to a song, someone's writing a song, it's a way of expressing yourself in a way that sometimes you can't otherwise. And I
mm,
mean, we even see things in the modern day. We're just talking about Super Bowl halftime and
mm,
how people were reacting to Bad Bunny
mm,
performing and how that became a little bit political in a way you normally wouldn't think, and that how that is very representative of our current political moment. Um, yeah, I also, I mean, it's very cheesy, but like music is just something so unique, um, and really touches like your emotional system and I wanted to say your soul, but that is way too cheesy. But you know what I mean.
mm.
And we've seen it in history and we've seen it today, and I think we will continue to see it.
And do you have any favorite moment or memory from being a part of a jazz band?
So many. I mean, thinking back to like our guest artists, I really enjoyed like our Brazilian program. I think that was last fall. That was also one of the hardest ones. That was a really
Mm,
difficult program. And I love the trumpet section, but we definitely tend to have a little bit more fun than others during rehearsal, where everyone else is like, locked in playing the music and we're standing in the back, like joking and dancing. Um, and that's also a thing our trumpet section does. We like to dance during our concerts. If you like look up a video of the Brown Jazz Band, like you will 100% see the like trumpet section like going like this, or we're
mm,
like moving like like so simple. But in past jazz bands and like high school, I haven't felt that type of community. Also being a woman in jazz is definitely difficult at times. In high school, I was pretty much like one of the only women one of the only girls in the ensemble, which is definitely tough. But like, even though it was like four non-male performers in the Brown Jazz Band, but it feels like the band is just such a community, and I've never felt out of place in the Brown Jazz Band, and that is something that really sticks out to me. And so going back to the Brazilian program, like it was really difficult, lots of really intricate notes, and the trumpet section really had to like lock in together and rehearse and push through that. And it was definitely a moment of like, wow, this is really challenging. This is really stressful. But being really grateful for the people that I was going through that with, who were supporting me, who were supporting each other, and the concert ended up being so much fun, and we did so much dancing. It was
mm.
lovely.
And how does that community compare to kind of what you felt in the newspaper or even what you felt in any other professional experience?
Yeah, I mean, those types of communities have given me some of the best moments I've had in recent years in my college career. Obviously, the newspaper I mean, it's not a music ensemble, but in a way, it kind of acts similarly in
Mm,
that, it's a bunch of moving pieces together. And just to see the Brown Daily Herald office, like the board comes in at 5 p.m., the section editors come in at 6. We start doing like reads through articles. Each article goes through like multiple different reads by different people with like the section editor and then a board member and then another section editor, another and a copy editor and then a final. So just to see all of that for like more than 8 stories a night and to see the orchestration of that happening is pretty incredible. And that these people can be doing anything else, can be doing their schoolwork or can be relaxing in front of the TV, but people choosing to be there, just as people are choosing to rehearse twice a week at the jazz band, just as people are choosing to get so in inside politics in Congress and to not turn off the news. It's a pretty amazing thing that when, and I think especially at Brown with the open curriculum where people like are really, motivated by what they're interested in, what their passions are, and that's where they spend their time. And you may think of it as work, and it's like it's a big time commitment. Last semester, I had, activities every single night of the week. And when people would say like, "Aren't you busy? Aren't you tired?" I was like, "Well, I mean, it's a break for me because it's really fun and it's enjoyable and it has me use my brain in a different way, which I think is really special."
And I'll be choosing to continue this interview. So I'd like to ask you some fun questions about yourself. What's something that people might not know about you, like fun facts? I know you already shared one, but I'm curious if you have any others.
Ooh, let's see. This is extremely random. But as a child, I was very interested in like just learning random skills on YouTube. So like origami or like cup stacking. And then one of them is rubber band magic tricks.
Hmm,
So like making a rubber band disappear or like go from like my hand to your hand. Extremely random, but that is like my party trick.
hmm.
Um, Also completely different, but I love matcha. And here's a matcha I
Yeah,
made
we see
today.
it.
Yeah, I think coffee sometimes takes the cake for being like the best like caffeinated drink, but I think matcha, at least for me, in this last year, I've been like learning how to make it myself, which has been really fun. And we have a place called Ceremony in Providence, which makes the best strawberry matcha in the world. So if you ever find yourself in Providence, Ceremony. But I've been trying to like recreate that at home. So that's
Hmm.
been like one of my recent passions.
Noted, noted. So what's one thing you love and one thing you strongly dislike just in general?
I love dachshunds. Like absolutely love dachshunds. And I have like my dachshund tote bag. I've got like the dachshund jewelry and dachshund everything. I hate raw tomatoes
Hmm.
with a burning passion. I love tomato soup. I love ketchup. I love like pasta and tomato sauce. But like you put a raw tomato on my hamburger, and I was like, no, absolutely not. I cannot do it. I don't know why, but there's something about it.
And I'm curious, since we've gotten into all these different experiences, what are your hopes and dreams, personally or professionally?
Oh, that's a great question to be thinking about as a second semester senior. That's professionally, I want to do something that helps the world. Um, I mean, at least right now, doing something with like reproductive rights.
Mhm.
Currently doing a senior thesis on that, and specifically like looking at abortion access in states that you think of as protective, and basically how the restrictive states around that state can impact access there. So like really wanting to do something there that, we think of all the modes that will impact someone's life, that it's like, oh, law, but also it's like implementation, and it's also like what communities are looking like and what the mechanisms are there. And I want to delve into that. And I want to find like the best way to help people and populations. Again, like whether that's in like reproductive rights, public health, any other issue that is impacting people. And I mean, I don't know necessarily I mean, I have friends who are like, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a computer, programmer. And I kind of know generally the things I'm interested in that I know I want to do something that helps people, do something related to writing, and not exactly sure what career necessarily yet. I mean, I'm considering law school. My dad's a lawyer, so I always swore it off, but I am considering it. Um, Doing like some policy research, maybe going back to the Hill. We
Hmm.
shall see. Maybe a mix of everything, doing like there's a lot of like policy research think tanks where you can write about political issues, which I was like, ah, that would be amazing. Or even doing like some long form journalism at some point. Who knows? So those are my hopes professionally. And otherwise, I mean, I want to continue being creative. I
Mm,
would love, I want to keep playing trumpet after graduation. I have friends who play in like little like jazz ensembles or like jazz jams at local restaurants, and I want to keep doing that and finding new ways to be creative and in ways that maybe I haven't had time to explore in college. So I did a lot of visual art in high school. I would love to go back to that, take a painting class, learn a language. Yeah, and also as a like graduating senior, I feel like a lot of us like look back and think like, what could I have done differently in my college career? Oh, like all these things I never got to take or things I never got to do. And I was thinking through that and thinking about like how excited I am to graduate and then continue learning these things because like life doesn't stop after college. And there are so many things to learn and so many things to do that I am excited to learn. So yeah,
mm.
those are my goals.
So building on what you've already done and just continuing to expand, which is exactly what you should be doing. And now I'm going to ask you what I call the golden question. What are some of your favorite movies and why do they resonate with you?
Ooh, that's a wonderful question.
Mm,
I'm a big musical movie person,
mm.
which I guess does
No
not come as a
surprise.
oh yeah. The one that sticks out, I really loved Tick Tick Boom,
Mm,
based like on a musical. Yeah, it's about Jonathan Larson who wrote Rent.
mm,
And it just really captures like the writer's experience and the writer's frustration.
mm,
And I love the music and I love the dance. There's just something about like a movie musical that makes me so happy.
mm,
And it's just so fun, but also really meaningful,
mm,
and captures like the beauty and pain that comes with living in New York City and trying to make it as a writer. So I really enjoyed that. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for like a West Side Story
mm.
or like any like, movie musical adaptation of a Broadway show or vice versa. So, yeah.
And I love Tick Tick Boom as well. I always joke 'cause I know a few other people, three other people who also saw it while they had COVID during COVID. So it's
Yep.
like a weird like connection thing between me and a few other film students back from
Oh,
who I went to school with. And also something I want to ask because you spent time in DC with the with your internship, just because something I meant to ask earlier. What was that experience like being in the city?
yeah, it's so funny because I mean, someone who lives just outside New York City,
Mm,
consider myself a New Yorker through and through. And it's like
yeah.
any other city, like, and a lot of New Yorkers are like this. But I love DC actually, and I feel like I really am someone that wants to like make the most of my time when it's limited, like on any trip or something, and like see all the sights and do all the things. And I feel like so it was 11 weeks, I really got to do that. So there's so many lovely like free museums.
Mm,
That I really enjoy the Museum of American History, where they have all these movie artifacts. They have like Dorothy's red like shoes, and they have costumes from Hamilton, um, and like old musical instruments. Like going there was so much fun. Um, 4th of July in DC. There's nothing else like it. Went to like Old Town Alexandria and then went up and watched the fireworks by the river. And that was so great. Trying a lot of happy hours and lots of restaurants. It's funny, you also go to all the like hill happy hour spots, which are like a
mm,
block away from the office. And another thing that you see is like Democrats and Republicans all sitting around talking about politics, drinking uh, their two margaritas and chips and salsa for $20 deals
mm,
at the taqueria that is like the like hill happy hour spot.
mm.
Was just really fun and like immersing myself. There we went to the congressional baseball game where it's Democrats and Republicans playing against each other in baseball. Savannah Banana. I can name so many really fun things I did, and I have a lot of friends who were there over the summer, a lot of friends I met through my internship. Um, so it was just a really lovely experience. And thinking about post grad, I would
Mm.
love to be in DC. I'd love to be in New York. I also love the metro in DC a lot better than New York. It's a lot cleaner. Even if it doesn't stop at every block, it's still like I think overall a nicer system. And it's also just cool like being somewhere where a lot's happening.
Mm.
Um, you see things on the news and you're like, okay, I am like right there. Filming at the White House, like you can walk right by, for better or for worse. But it's just a really exciting place.
And I literally wasn't far off with comparing them to two different parties to sports teams
Yeah,
in my
literally.
in my assessment. And overall, Sophia, this was a really awesome episode of the show, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. This was really fun.
Awesome. And do you have any motivational words or plugs or anything you want to leave the audience with before you go?
Ooh, wow. Very inspiring. I think that the boundaries between things are less rigid than we'd often think, and I've fallen into the trap of thinking like there's only one path or one thing to do, but there isn't, and to just really
Mm,
follow what you're interested in, what you're drawn to, and that everything will kind of shake itself out. That not to worry if it's like one step and then the next, just following it day by day, and you know whatever you're passionate about, and
mm.
really leading through that.
And I appreciate you sharing all of your passions and your clear enthusiasm for the things you do here. And I'm sure it'll be inspiring for a lot of listeners. And I appreciate you sharing your insights and all these fun and interesting experiences and how you're blending something kind of like you said, rigid like politics with something very creative like jazz and writing. And I'm very excited to see what you will do in all these fields.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you so much for your wonderful questions and for having me.
And thank you so much for your time. And as always, this is Ryan Ziaks with the Zicast, where everyone has a story. Signing off. Thank you so much for watching.